Canada's largest telecom companies have made a decision to exclude Huawei from participating in the construction of the country's 5G networks. On June 2nd, Bell and Telus announced that they will both use equipment from Nokia and Ericsson to build out their 5G networks in Canada. Previously, Rogers had also identified Ericsson as its 5G supplier. Australia and Japan have followed the US lead and rejected Huawei's 5G technology, with Canada joining in the rank. Which countries would come next to reject Huawei?
Welcome to China Observer. I'm Fox Canning. In this episode, we'll take a look at what happened to Huawei, the world's largest telecom equipment manufacturer, and explore its future. Huawei is a mysterious company from China. It is a huge private company, yet important information, such as its source of funding and shareholder structure, have never been made public. Facing US criminal charges and economic sanctions, Huawei announced at the end of 2019 that it was planning to relocate its research and development center from the United States to Canada. Meng Wanzhou, daughter of the founder of Huawei and chief financial officer of the telecom giant, is also currently detained in Canada, while Canada's courts determine what to do about an extradition request by the United States government. Canada has been forced to take a stance between the US and China and has been perceived as weak concerning the relationship with the CCP.
On May 15, 2019, US President Donald Trump signed an executive order banning the purchase of foreign telecommunications equipment and added Huawei to the list of export control entities. Huawei usually adopts a low-price strategy, setting their price up to 40% lower than its rivals. In the past, Canadian telecom companies were unable to resist such low pricing and generous financing, forcing Huawei's competitors such as Ericsson and Nokia out of the market. On May 7, 2019, Lee Hongbo, president of Huawei Canada, proudly declared that Huawei's 5G technology was born in Canada. What he did mention was that Huawei acquired the 5G technology as a result of recruiting all 5 of the former Nortel's top 5G experts. Nortel was once Canada's world-class telecommunications equipment company with advanced technology and had more than 9,000 employees. At one point, Nortel's market value was 1/3 of the Toronto Stock Exchange, but in 2009, Nortel filed for bankruptcy. Brian Shields, Nortel's former senior safety advisor, said that from 2004 to 2009, Chinese hackers had been stealing confidential documents from Nortel, leading to the company's eventual demise. According to Shields, the beneficiary of Nortel's bankruptcy was Huawei. The Canadian military and the Canadian Intelligence Agency have been warning Canada about Huawei's close ties to the Chinese government, citing that adopting Huawei 5G would lead to a high security risk that may cause Canada to lose the intelligence sharing eligibility among Five Eyes alliance. On May 27, the Supreme Court of British Columbia ruled that the case against Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou meets the dual criminality standard for extradition, and that extradition proceedings will continue. Canada previously detained her at the request of the United States, where Meng and Huawei were accused of bank fraud in violation of US sanctions against Iran and demanded Meng to be extradited to the United States.
Chinese officials linking those two cases from the very beginning. Canada has an independent judicial system that functions without interference or override by politicians. It is one of the things that is deeply dear to Canadians in our system to keep it strong and to assure the division of powers within our democracy. China doesn't work quite the same way and don't seem to understand that we do have an independent judiciary from political intervention. We will continue to follow and uphold the independence of our judicial system while we advocate for the release of the 2 Michaels who have been arbitrarily detained by China in retaliation for a judicial system that is independent in the way it functions.
Canada court ruling on Meng's case and the fact that Canadian telecommunication companies are now giving up their commercial interests to exclude Huawei may well indicate that Canada is aligning with the United States in the US-China confrontation.
Australia announced in August 2018 that it was banning Huawei from participating in Australia's 5G network construction, making it the first country to do so. In November 2018, New Zealand's government similarly blocked wireless network operators from using Huawei equipment in 5G networks, citing national security concerns. The Japanese government also announced new procurement guidelines in December 2018. Japan's government agencies and the self-defense forces will ban communication equipment from manufacturers suspected of breaches of national security. Although Huawei is not named, it is essentially banning products of Huawei and other Chinese manufacturers. How much room is left for Huawei to grow?
According to TrendForce, in 2018, among the global mobile network infrastructure equipment manufacturers, Huawei's market share ranks first at 29.5%, Ericsson at 28.5%, and Nokia 23%. Huawei's base stations are used in 150 countries around the world. Huawei's global 5G server equipment market share is 52%, while Nokia's is 28% and Ericsson 13%. However, all of that is quickly changing. The biggest concern at the moment is the attitude of European countries towards Huawei. In order to tap into the European 5G demand, Huawei have launched an investment offensive. In February this year, Huawei announced that it would invest more than 200 million euros in a new telecom equipment factory in France, in addition to setting up 5G research and development facilities in the UK and Switzerland. Germany's new draft security requirements do not explicitly exclude Huawei, so there is still the possibility for telecom providers to use Huawei products. The UK government approved the continued use of Huawei's 5G technology in January this year, but banned Huawei from supplying the sensitive parts or cores of the UK network. However, under the persuasion of the US government and in the midst of Hong Kong protests, The Times reported on June 1st that Prime Minister Boris Johnson is considering options to boost investment in domestic telecom firms to increase its competitiveness in the 5G market. The UK is also assessing the potential impact of US sanctions on Huawei and could consequently change its previous decision.
I'm sure there's a legal term for the imputing of a policy to me that I've not yet announced by my honourable friend. What I will say is he's absolutely right to be concerned about investment, to be concerned about the buying up of UK technology now by countries that may not always may have ulterior motives, and we are certainly bringing forward measures to ensure that we protect our technological base. And I'm happy he'll be hearing a lot more about that in the next few weeks.
The era of 5G heralds a more convenient life. For example, people will be able to download full HD movies in a matter of seconds. Autonomous vehicles, drones, smart factories, smart healthcare, and other technology will all develop rapidly due to 5G's characteristics of high speed, reduced delay, and large-scale equipment connectivity. Why does the world worry about Huawei?
It will take at least a few more years for 5G technology to become fully available, as 5G becomes involved in everything from hospitals to transportations and power plants. 5G networks will rapidly become part of every country's critical infrastructure. This makes the consequences of network problems more serious, and deliberate attacks or sabotage more concerning for governments. The larger the network, the more opportunities there are for hackers to attack, which means more complex systems and more components to protect. The US and some other countries are concerned that because Chinese companies are unable to escape the control of the Chinese government, Chinese-made 5G equipment, chips, and software may be equipped to monitor customers and could consequently become the CCP's Trojan horse for accessing the world's information infrastructure. On May 15, the U.S. Department of Commerce announced that it will require manufacturers to obtain an export license from the U.S. government when exporting semiconductor chips to Huawei that are made with the U.S. technology or designs, even if they were manufactured outside the U.S. If the U.S. prohibits Huawei suppliers to use U.S. technology, Huawei will have few other options when it comes to chips manufacturing. Under China's state intelligence law, all Chinese companies, regardless of where they are located, are required to provide data when asked to do so by the Chinese Communist Party. There are no legal procedures or third-party oversight mechanisms in this process. Norbert Röttgen, chairman of German Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, stated that the question was not whether we trust Huawei, but whether we trust the Chinese Communist Party.
After the United States stepped up its efforts to ban the sale of computer chips to Huawei, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, one of the world's leading chip makers, immediately halted all Huawei's orders. In response to rumors that Huawei was contacting MediaTek, the company made a statement saying that it has always complied with global trade laws and regulations. There are concerns about whether South Korea's Samsung will help Huawei, but South Korean media believes that Samsung will not help its competitors. Evidently, the Chinese Communist Party is becoming increasingly unpopular in the world, and there is no doubt that Huawei, which is extensively tied to the CCP, has less and less chances of surviving. Thank you for watching China Observer. See you next time.